Let's click into the global tropical overview for June the 28th, 2023. As is always the case in these videos, let's express your mind alone, and when making decisions ahead of any tropical cyclones, look towards your local weather office, local emergency management, and local tropical cyclone warning center. Across the tropics today, we have three systems, same three that we've been talking about this whole week, surprisingly, but there's a lot going on, and we're going to start again in the Atlantic as we're looking again at a system east of Bermuda, and I don't mention Cindy here because the remnants of Cindy have actually completely dissipated. They continue to track westwards and are now in this bundle of thunderstorms somewhere. It actually might not even be there. It might just be completely gone. But now Cindy is completely gone, and if this system were to develop, this would get a new designation and a new name if it got that far, though conditions ahead of it are not really looking the best. Now, I want to point out you can see the trough that we're going to be talking about today in the water vapor loop. You can see this general flow around it, and you can also see all the enhanced convection ahead of the trough. This is part of the baroclinic support that you can get from these troughs, and what I talked about a couple of days ago when we were talking about Cindy. But now Cindy is completely gone. And now we're just going to be watching this system. Now, right now, it's in a fairly low shear environment. You can see the strong shear, really, of the trough is over here, west of Bermuda. But this is not going to stay the same. This is going to move eastwards, and you can see that in the modeling. Here's a GFS. As the system moves towards Bermuda, and it does put a little low-pressure signal there, but we start to see greater shear aloft, and this is likely to inhibit most formation. Now, there may be a time getting towards 4 days where the system might be able to get a lower shear environment in to possibly try and develop. And you can see here on the modeling on the GFS, it gets underneath this upper level low. And at that point, we could see some development try to take place, whether that's subtropical or tropical. Yeah, but either way, the chances are not looking too high. Here's the National Hurricane Center graphic. They're giving this system still about a 20% chance of development as it moves northwards. And you can also see Cindy here. No chance of reformation as it has now completely dissipated. Now we're going to quickly move back to the East Pacific. Here is now Hurricane Adrian, and we've had really a lot happen over the past couple of days, really. Yesterday, this system was just 91E, and now it's a hurricane. We've seen some rapid intensification take place. Now, this system does have a few things putting pressure onto it. Now, they're not inhibitive. If you look in the northeastern part of this satellite loop, if you look towards Mexico, you can see some cloud elements being pushed towards the storm. This is better illustrated in the water vapor loop. If you look at that, you can see some elements being pushed towards the storm at the low levels, but also if you look at the upper level cirrus here on the northeastern side, you'll notice that it really cannot get past this point, and this indicates some of that shear from that ridge I've talked about over the past several days. Now, this shear it's not inhibitive right now. Clearly, it's not inhibitive. This system has continued to push forward regardless of the shear. You can see this is a microwave path we got earlier today. It's built a formidable core here, which is why it's a hurricane now. And given that this shear is, not inhibitive, as long as it stays that way for Adrian, we should see this system intensify a little bit more, possibly getting towards Category 2 intensity before shear really increases. Now, this is a 200 millibar flow from the GFS. And about 2 days out, and you can see, in part due to this ridge and also Invest 92E, we start to get more easterly shear pushing on Adrian, and by that point, alongside cooling sea surface temperatures, rapid weakening would likely take place, and the National Hurricane Center does show this. You can see their forecast over the next couple of days has us staying a hurricane to about Friday evening. And then as that shear and sea surface temperature effects start to degrade for the system, we start to see rapid weakening. And then by that point, we start to see the system degenerate into an open wave. And you can see by Monday, not expecting the system to be a tropical storm anymore. All right, moving on to Invest 92E, the final system for today. You can see the general look right now is fairly disorganized. You can see lots of thunderstorm activity just bubbling up around it. It's not really organized, but we are seeing some signs that the system is developing. You can see some weak westerlies here on the southern side of the system. These wrap around into more southerlies on the eastern side and then wrap around more to looks like northeasterlies on the western side of the system, indicating a general broad circulation underneath this convection. We can confirm this general structure if we look at the high pass that we got earlier today. You can see the weak westerlies transitioning into southerlies on the eastern side, and then we've had that was wrapping around northeasterlies on the western side, giving us that elongated area of low pressure. So it is developing, and given enough time in the environment it's in, it will likely develop. And in fact, we're seeing signs today that this system may even be a good candidate to become a hurricane as well, alongside Adrian. Now here's a GFS 200 millibar flow. You can see generally aloft right now, fairly light flow. And if we go into the forecast, here's 48 hours out, and you can see there's Adrian, and here is 92E, a formed tropical cyclone and a formidable one at that, with a fairly favorable look. You can see we have good anticyclonic flow aloft surrounding the system, allowing that good outflow to expand away from the system. And if we get a sounding over this, we get what these types of patterns in the upper levels indicate is a low shear environment. You can see the mean shear throughout the troposphere from about 200 millibars here to about 850 millibars is about only 11 knots. Not too strong at all, and that system can definitely fend that off. And this low shear environment is expected to generally hold. Now, there may be some time where the system may be sheared a little bit. You can see in the model here, there may be some shear pushing on the system from this bridge, say closer to 3 days. But given that the system may be formidable by this time and may have a well-built structure, it may be able to fend that off a little bit. Now, the system is still forecast to just stay offshore of Mexico. We've seen that general consensus that I talked about yesterday stick. And in fact, if I go to some of the graphics that Tropical Tidbits offers here from some of the ensemble plots, here's the GFS plots here. And you can see the general idea of keeping this system offshore. And even for Baja California, there may be some threat to it eventually, but in general, the mean is carrying out to sea. And even at that, sea surface temperatures do cool down here, remember, as we've looked at a couple of times this week. Now, here's the Canadian tracks as well. You can see the Canadian, remember, originally was on the northern side of this envelope, picking it up into Mexico. Now it's coming further into line with the GFS and the European, keeping this system generally offshore. And one part of this is that this system now has a formed area of low pressure. Now it is still a bit elongated, so there may be a little bit of wiggle room there. But in general, we have a good idea of where the initiation of the storm is. So now the models can actually get a good sight. Now, we will not likely get away completely without impacts here in Mexico. You could still get some adverse impact, especially if the system perhaps gets a little bit closer than the GFS depicts here. But either way, even if the system is offshore like the GFS predicts, you could still get some outer bands over the landmass. And again, as I've talked about this week, with onshore flow into a mountainous terrain, you can certainly get lots of rainfall in a short period of time. Alongside that, you can get some rip currents and high surf there along the coastline, and perhaps some gusty winds, but that is more dependent on exactly where the system tracks. And that is something, the exact distance to the coastline is something we really will never be able to tell you this far out, even 3 days. It's just something you got to watch. It's more of wobble watching, but alongside watching where the actual compact area of low pressure consolidates within that general elongated area of low pressure. Now here's the National Hurricane Center graphic. You can see, if I can get it pulled up, there's Adrian, and now the National Hurricane Center are giving Invest 92E a 90% chance of formation as the system tracks generally towards the northwest, towards Mexico. Now, a quick recap again on the Atlantic system. Here is the big loop. You can see Cindy is gone. It's in this area of thunderstorm activity here, but this area of low pressure is being monitored, and this system could develop as it comes northward, but environmental conditions will likely inhibit most development. But either way, some adverse impacts are likely to come to Bermuda as the system comes through. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching.